Hi, everyone. This is Andrew Carvajal. And in this installment of the Alpin Academy, we're going to see how to complete the outside of Canada work permit application for the spouse of either a worker or a student, so an accompanying spouse of a temporary resident. We're going to be looking at the outside of Canada work permit application, but the one inside Canada is fairly similar. There's a few different things since the person is applying inside Canada, but most of the important elements are still the same. So this is the IMM 1295, but this will be an application for an open work permit. Now, you might have the situation where the spouse does not qualify for a work permit, um, whether they're accompanying a worker or a student. And in that case, you would be applying for a TRV. We do have another video of how to apply for a TRV for an accompanying child. And you could do that for an accompanying spouse as well, obviously making a few changes. So here is the work permit form. It's the same form that you would use for the principal applicant, but here it's an open work permit that we're applying for. And by principal applicant, I mean principal applicant if they're applying for a work permit. If they're applying for a study permit, it would be a different form. So I'm assuming that the spouse, I made up all the names in here just so you know they're all fake and all the information. We're assuming that the spouse has never applied to Canada before, so they don't have a UCI, or we don't know their UCI if they had applied before. Full name, as it shows on the passport, that's always very important. If there's more than one last name included, if there's more than one name, first name or middle name included as well. Date of birth, sex, citizenship, and what's the current territory of residence of this person. So we're assuming that they're applying in their same country of citizenship. If they weren't a citizen where they're applying, if they were a temporary resident, such as a worker or a student, we would have to enter when they started that status and when that status will end. We're assuming they're also applying at the same place where we've said it's the current country of residence, which is Peru in this case. You could have the odd situation, it's not very common, but when, for instance, someone is applying in a different country than where they're currently located, sometimes we have to do this when we have someone who's physically in Canada but applying outside of Canada because they have to, because they're not allowed to apply inside of Canada for a work permit or a study permit. And then in that case, we would put that they're in Canada, but we would put the country that we're applying as their country of citizenship. So this person is married. There could also be in a common law relationship. They're married to the principal applicant. There's that information there. This person didn't have a previous relationship, but it could be that they did. And if they had more than one previous relationship, you could always have an addendum, so an additional sheet uploaded under a separate box because the system won't let you upload it with this same form with that information. So their language, information, their passport information, fairly uncontroversial. Some countries have national identity documents, and if this person has a national identity document, enter it. If they're a US PR card holder, green card holder, you can enter the information there. And we know we tend, when it comes to the address, we tend to put our office address as the mailing address, and then the residential address, the address of the client. It's not mandatory to do it this way. Some people just put the client's address, and that's absolutely fine as well. But in the contact information, we always put ours. So our number here, I've made it up, and our email, my email, for instance, or my colleagues' emails if they're submitting the application as a representative of record. This part is important. We're applying here for an open work permit for a spouse. So you don't really have to enter any information here. You can just simply put open work permit, and I normally leave all of this blank. You might know where they're going because they might be going to the same city as the principal applicant, but I normally leave this blank. Information about their education, their highest level of education, post-secondary education, and then the work history. So you might have a work history that they're only interested in the last 10 years. You might have less than 3 entries, which is the case here with this client that I've created. But sometimes you might have a client who has more than 3 entries, so more than 3 jobs in the last 10 years. When that happens, we tend to do an addendum like the one that I have here. Here, this addendum that is showing you as an example has the name of the principal applicant, so you would actually have to put the name of the spouse there. And here's where you can enter the additional employment history. This is the way that we do it. But in this case, as you can see, this person doesn't have more than 3 jobs in the last 10 years, so we can just leave it there. And then the background information, anyone who's 18 years or older must complete it. In this case, I made up that this person has a visa refusal in the past. So I declared it there. I marked yes to answer B. I was refused a U.S. tourist visa in 2022 when I was a child and I was applying to visit the U.S. with my parents. You don't have to provide a lot of information here. The most important thing is that they make a truthful disclosure and a wholesome disclosure. But sometimes you might want to provide some information. If this person applied for a visa to a country in the past and it was approved later on, I like to make reference to that. And if it is a person who's applied to Canada before, you must answer yes there. And normally, for a lot of applications outside of Canada, or sometimes inside of Canada as well, when you've answered yes to any of the background information questions, except for the one whether they've applied to Canada before, you need to fill out a Schedule 1 form, and we have a separate video for that. And then at the end, the name of the person who's completing this form, you just have to type it in because you have to upload this form in electronic format, so you won't be able to have it printed and signed. And then the date when this is being signed. I normally do this fairly recently. I mean, it's very. I give this to the clients to review a couple of days before we submit it, or the same day that we submit it. Obviously, they review it before we submit it, but I try to make sure that this date is very close to the date of submission. Once the form is ready, you do need to validate it. And then you'll get a confirmation that it's been validated. It will show yes here as well. Once it's been validated, then you save it and then you can upload it. And that's the application for a work permit of a spouse made outside of Canada. Thank you for watching. If you want to continue learning, be sure to explore the full range of resources available to immigration and legal practitioners through the Alpin Academy and Alpin's CPD courses. Visit alpin.ca/academy to access the entire library of practical on-demand content.